Welcome to part 2 of this Exploring Boys Education episode on helping boys embrace healthy masculinity. Exploring Boys Education is a monthly podcast produced by the International Boys Schools Coalition. I'm Bruce Collins. If you haven't yet listened to part 1 of this episode, in which Gordon Braxton, author, activist, and educator on sexual violence, and former director of men's outreach on sexual violence prevention at Harvard University, shares his insights on healthy masculinity, I'd urge you to do so. Also, listen to part 1 for this month's IBSC newsreel. Our guest for part 2 is best-selling author Craig Wilkinson. Craig has produced outstanding resources for fathers at all stages of their fatherhood journey. He founded the non-profit organization Father a Nation in 2013 in response to the tremendous damage to society caused by the crisis of fatherlessness in South Africa. His belief that if we can heal men, we can heal the world has seen thousands of men and their families touched by the work of Father a Nation. To support his work with men in the fight against gender-based violence, Craig has written a booklet called No Excuse for Abuse, which unpacks the reasons men abuse and outlines the actions we need to take to put an end to gender-based violence. Craig believes strongly that no boy is born an abuser and that the solution to toxic masculinity is healthy masculinity. To teach, promote, and inspire positive, healthy masculinity, he wrote the Six-Pack of Champion Virtues booklet. Craig was awarded the 2019 GQ Humanitarian Man of the Year Award for his work with men in communities. Craig, we're grateful to you for sharing your insights with us. Welcome to Exploring Boys Education.
Thanks so much, Bruce. Great to be here with you today.
So, Craig, let's dive right in. You've asserted that at his core, every man wants to be a good man, but not every man knows how.
Right.
I want to start off by talking about why do you think we find ourselves in this space at this moment in time?
I think a number of reasons. I absolutely believe that boys deeply desire, the vast majority of boys deeply desire to be a good man. And what they do is they look to older men, initially primarily their father, to show them what that means, to show them how to be a good man. And so we desperately need good male role models and fathers to impart to boys and to model to them and show them, what it means to be a good man. And I think, we're in a very fascinating place at the moment, aren't we, in the world, where masculinity is really being demonized. There's a lot of social justice warriors out there. There's a lot of men being cancelled. There's a lot of polarization, so we're in a bit of a difficult state where I think in many ways we're losing the plot. We in many ways dehumanizing because we're looking at identities that we're putting them ahead of our humanity, and our primary identity is human beings, and we're equally valuable, of equal value, of equal worth, and deserving of equal opportunity. Every single human being on the planet, no matter what their particular ethnic background, gender, all the different things we do. So I think we're at this point because there has been historical abuse, because fatherhood structures have broken down, the family unit has broken down. Historically, particularly here in South Africa, there's been a tremendous amount of trauma in terms of families, units being broken apart. And it's a cycle that we need to begin to really correct.
I mean, you alluded to it, Craig, but as you said, society and the media at large often portray a distorted and negative view of masculinity. I was wondering, in your opinion, as boys journey to adulthood, how might our member schools develop in their students who identify as boys a clear, strong, and positive understanding of what it means to be a man and a good person at that?
That's a great question. And I think that's just what makes me so excited about working with you and IBSC is there's such an important role that we play and the member schools play in raising good men. I think for me, and I'll just give 3 brief responses. One is the starting point. We need to start from the point of view that true masculinity is a wonderful, beautiful, great gift to society. And we've kind of lost that. A lot of boys are feeling on the back foot about being a man. And I think we need to start as schools to say we must not apologize for being men, for being boys, for identifying as a boy and as a man. because that's a fantastic gift to society. So let's, I often say to boys at schools, would you be able to pull out your cell phone and tweet, "I'm so proud to be a man"? And a lot of boys, recoil at that. They say, no, so we'd be cancelled, and that's such a sad thing. So we've got to start from the point of view, masculinity, true masculinity, a beautiful, wonderful gift, and emphasize that. And, say to boys, in your DNA is a rich heritage of heroism. Men have gone to war to fight against evil for their countries and their families, and died in the process. Men have, for centuries and years and years, gone out and done hard work to support their families. Men have rushed into burning buildings to save. But there's a rich DNA heritage of heroism. So we start from that point of view and create that culture. And that doesn't mean that women aren't in any way. It's not an either or situation. But masculinity is a wonderful gift. So is femininity. So is all of humanity. And we need to. The second thing we need to do is provide an environment where it's okay to not be okay. One of the big lies about masculinity is that big boys don't cry, and so we don't allow boys to be vulnerable. And what happens is boys then don't learn the language of vulnerability, the language of the emotions, and they feel that they always have to man up and be strong. And we see that internationally, the suicide rate amongst men is up to 4 times higher than that of women, and this is one of the reasons. Because men feel we can't be vulnerable. So if we create an environment where it's okay to not be okay, platforms where boys can share, where we say that vulnerability is actually strength, it takes a lot more courage for me to say, Bruce, I'm really struggling, than for me to say, Bruce, I'm fine when I'm not fine. So that's the second thing we need to do. And I think the third thing is to teach and model true masculinity. There's a lot of confusion about what it means to be a man. What is masculinity? What does it mean? And if we really teach, and that's why I developed the 6-pack course, just talking about 6 virtues of what does it mean to be a good man? What does it look like in today's world? Because there's a lot of confusion around that. So I think if we do those three things as schools, we'll go a heck of a long way to growing excellent men.
Yeah. Craig, you've just mentioned the 6-pack of champion virtues, the booklet that you produced. And this also forms a foundation for an online class you offer. And in this, you highlight the characteristics, and I know many of our schools have accessed this document and have been challenged by it. But you highlight the characteristics of what you call true masculinity, and I'm wondering, how does this authentic masculinity you speak about differ from what many boys are taught about being a man?
It's a great question, Bruce. If you look at the messaging we get from society about masculinity, essentially I talk about the 4 big lies, which we grew up, our generation certainly did, about what it means to be a man. Sex, power, money, and big boys don't cry. You talk to any man, they recognize those messages. You look at media, it's how many women have I managed to, how many notches have I managed to, that makes me a man. It's an absolute lie. Money, I need money to be a man. I need the flash cars and power. Power is big, either as a jock, as a sportsman, a bicep, or, political power, or, and we see that throughout society, men just jockeying for power, for money, for to be the macho stud that gets the most women, and this is just a total false concept of what masculinity. And the other one we mentioned earlier: big boys don't cry, don't be vulnerable, whatever. And then there's another thing that's happening in society today, which is masculinity being demonized. And there was a research done in the UK by a group called YouGov, and they asked men of various different ages, is masculinity a positive thing or a negative thing? And in the category 18 to 24-year-old men, 46% said it's a negative thing. And so there's just a very negative perception about masculinity, men on the back foot, feeling demonized, feeling that. And then on the other hand, you've got this macho concept, which is also a false one. So lots of false messaging about masculinity. So the 6-pack, is really just highlighting 6 virtues, which I believe would make a man an excellent man, which belies these lies that we hear. It goes counter to them. And if I can just run through them, the first one is true masculinity uses its strength for good. Every man has strength. Every boy has strength. And I think it's so important that we know this. Our strength is not just our physical strength, obviously physically, particularly upper body strength, but there's also verbal strength. What you do with your words is important. You can bully with words. We have emotional strength. Any relationship we're in, the other person, we have some sort of power over that person in the sense that we can make them feel good or bad by how we behave. So there's a wide range of strength that men have. And the number one quality for me on true masculinity is how do we use our strength? Not how much strength you have. It's not that. It's what do you do with it? And we can either be passive, fail to use our strength. We all know the saying, all it takes for evil to prevail is for good men to be silent or to do nothing. And so a lot of men are passive. In fact, I love what John Eldridge says in one of his books. He says that the opposite of masculinity is not femininity, because those are complementary. The opposite of masculinity is passivity. We're not designed to be passive or silent. When someone's bullying someone, we're not supposed to be quiet. So just failing to use strengths or misusing strengths. A lot of men take what's not theirs. They force themselves. They can never say, I'm sorry. It's a misuse of strength. And the only way that a man should use his strength is for good. The second quality is true masculinity tends its fields. And that's an agricultural metaphor. We all have a field which contains all the things that we are responsible for, that we have an impact on in life. And true masculinity steps up and takes full responsibility. Make sure that every person in his circle feels safe and cared for, and every responsibility he has. Is he a prefect? Is he a teacher? Is he whatever role and responsibilities? And we all have many. We have fathers, sons, brothers, uncles, students. How are we stepping up and taking full responsibility? How are we fulfilling those roles? So that's the second one. We tend our fields. The third one is we judge ourselves by our character. In other words, not what's on the outside, but what's on the inside. So it's not the size of my biceps, the size of my bank balance. It's my character. How do I have a set of values? Do I live those values? Do I live my life with integrity? Am I a man of my word? This is how I need to define and judge myself. We're living in a world very much based on image. How do I come across on social media? What is my image? What do people think of me? What's my reputation? And instead of judging ourselves and defining ourselves and valuing ourselves on the externalities, we need to define ourselves by the character. And how resilient am I? If I say I'm going to do something, do I do it? And that's the third key quality.
Craig, sorry, I just want to come in there. I mean, fascinating. I taught in boys' schools or boys' school for many years before joining IBSC, and I think the one thing in my last probably 3 or 4 years that really struck me is how much more boys were concerned with how they looked, and the number of problematic behaviors in terms of diets and drug use and other things that boys were getting into simply to promote the kind of image externally that they thought others wanted to see from them. So that point really, really hits home for me as something that boys are battling with.
Yeah, and I think social media has just made that so much worse, isn't it? I mean, we live by the likes we get and the image we have on social media, and that's really not what counts. What counts is how do I live my life on a day-to-day basis? Am I true to my values? Do I have integrity? So 100%, it's a real battle. And then the fourth one is true masculinity builds a band of brothers, and this is such a crucial one. As men, we tend to we have different love languages. We tease each other. Men rip each other off and tease each other and mock each other, and of course, there's a place for that. That's affectionate and it's good, but we don't honor each other generally. We don't say, "Hey, Bruce, I just really honor you as a man and as a father and as an educator and appreciate the contribution." We don't generally say things like this to each other. And we need each other. I mentioned earlier that men commit suicide on average 4 times more than women, and partly it's because we don't have a support structure of brothers around us that we're able to be very honest and open with. We feel we need to pose and pretend, and research around the world shows that a lot of men are lonely. We have friends that we can watch a game of soccer with or a game of rugby and hang out with, but do we have friends we can really share our heart with? And do we have friends that can really step up and stand with us when we really need them, and so it's so crucial we build a band of brothers. I think we can only be our best when we have a group of men around us that sharpen us, point out our blind spots, encourage us, stand with us, honor us, enable us to be vulnerable with them so that they can be, and it's so important to build this. And society's not really geared for men to do that. Number 5 is we mentor the next generation. It's every man and boy's responsibility to mentor the next generation. Somebody's watching us, and how we live our lives has a huge impact on the next generation. I mean, the younger generation look to us to model what it means to be a man. They take their cues from us, and we need to be constantly aware of, is my life worth copying? Is it a life worth emulating? Am I modeling the right way? Both for young boys and for young women, to show women that actually masculinity is and must be, unfortunately not always is, a safe space. It's a safe space. And then the 6th one, Bruce, is to make the world a better place. We're here to make the world a better place. Is everyone in my life better off because I'm in their life? Is every situation I find myself in better because I'm in it? And, you get 2 types of people in the world. You get those who are takers and those who are givers. The guy who will borrow your car and return it, and it's dirty and there's no petrol. Or you get the guy who borrows your car and it comes back and it's full of petrol and it's clean. That's a giver. And I think the attitude that men need to have in life is, am I making the world a better place? Am I fulfilling my purpose? Am I giving more than I'm taking? And am I going to leave wherever I go better than where I found it? And in a nutshell, those are the 6 virtues. And I think these are so crucial to teach young boys and say, fulfill those. You're going to be a great man. It's not about macho. It's not about sporting ability or athletic. It's about these 6 virtues that make you a great man.
Craig, before we started recording, you said we could speak about this stuff all day. And I know we've only touched the tip of the iceberg as we consider the work around masculinity that needs to happen, particularly in boys' schools places. I think you alluded to it earlier. Boys' schools have a unique opportunity to have incredible conversations with the young men in their schools and in their care. But I wanted to ask you, as we close this part of this episode, would you be able to share a little bit more about the work you do and how interested schools can connect with you? I know you're based in South Africa, but the virtual space has made the world a lot smaller. So I know there might be other schools around the world that might like to connect as well.
So there are 2 areas that I work in. One is we started a non-profit organization called Father a Nation, which works a lot with men in communities around South Africa, predominantly poorer communities, but not exclusively. And where we talk about the 6-pack and we provide platforms for men to share. And we've seen remarkable results, in certain areas where we provide. One of the programs we run is, I think, called the Bands of Brothers. And we get small groups of men to come and just provide a platform for them to share openly and teach them the 6 virtues. And we've seen remarkable results. Men who have been abusive that are no longer abusing. One man was planning a murder and shared this with his band of brothers, and so that's been a remarkable. We run also the No Excuse campaign, which really talks about combating gender-based violence and just saying there's never ever an excuse for abuse of any kind, never. But there are reasons, and we look at the reasons and we try and overcome those reasons and get men to really be good men. So that's on the non-profit side. On the 6-pack side, I'm very excited to be working with schools now. We've developed the 6-pack into an online course. It's a freestanding online course that anyone can sign up for. And we're making it available to schools at a very, very discounted price, just 100 Rand per boy. There's 7 modules. It's a video, some reading material, some exercises, and it's something they can do in their own time or in a class. But each one signs up. So I'm very excited about that. Just teaching young boys how to be great men.
Yeah. And obviously, I know you're probably very busy, but I know you do have speaking engagements and that at schools as well. And I'm sure schools will be able to reach out to you and explore that possibility with you too.
Absolutely, yeah. I'm Craig at fatheranation.co.za. You can reach out, and the website is www.beingman.life. With pleasure, I do speak at a lot of schools, and love interacting with the senior boys on the staff.
Well, thank you, Craig, for adding your voice to this important conversation. We value your input and insights, and we trust also that what you've shared will help boys' schools, teachers in boys' schools, and parents who listen to this podcast to think deeply about how they engage in these conversations with boys. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Thanks for the opportunity. Great chatting to you.
We trust you have enjoyed listening to parts 1 and 2 of Helping Boys to Embrace Healthy Masculinity. We know that member schools around the world are invested in this work and are implementing excellent programs to empower boys to adopt healthy and positive expressions of masculinity. As the IBSC board asserted in 2019, we reaffirm our belief that boys' schools succeed for many boys. That success stems from many reasons, but foremost from teaching young men moral values and principles that strengthen our society and model kindness, tolerance, empathy, and especially respect for women. As Amy Ahart mentioned in this month's newsreel, which was in part 1 of this episode, we cannot wait to see you in Dallas in June for the 2022 IBSC Annual Conference hosted by St. Mark's School of Texas. Until next time, keep safe and well.